I love the 1970s. It still seems to me like a magical time unlike any other. This is probably for no good reason other than the fact that I was a child during that time. The decade's many artifacts, grainy film, funky music, scary public service announcements,
Isn't that cute?
are permanently imprinted in my memory, stronger and clearer than any cultural highlights from the past 20 years.
If you think Robert Altman made a mess of the Army in MASH, wait till you see what he does to the cops in Brewster, McCLOUD.
I was 3 years old when I saw the trailer for Robert Altman's Brewster, McCLOUD. I laughed at the bird poop falling on people's faces. Outside the movie theater, I was fascinated by the film's poster, which featured Bud Cort wearing a gigantic pair of wings. These images were part of an entire audiovisual avalanche overwhelming my toddler imagination. In my mind, Brewster McCLOUD existed in the same post-psychedelic kids universe as H.R. Pufnstuf, the TV show and movie that featured a young protagonist with a similar haircut, adult-sized puppets, a wicked witch, and a talking flute.
Boy, that mean old witch almost drowned us.
A couple of years later, I saw a super weird film adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. I still have the book and record for the movie that my mom bought for me in the theater lobby. Also existing in this same universe was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where kids were exposed to pneumatic tubes, altered states, and the coolest car wash theme park ride imaginable. I wouldn't see Willy Wonka until I was a few years older, but the TV spots made an indelible impression on me at 3 years old. I really wanted to see it. I also really wanted to see Brewster McCLOUD, but that wouldn't happen until I was in college. Not only was it intended for grown-ups, it was difficult to find once I was grown up enough to see it. When I finally found it as a VHS rental, my 20-year-old brain was reacquainted with my 3-year-old self. Brewster McCLOUD is above all else a fairy tale. According to the book about the making of the film, Altman joked that the film was an X-rated children's film. Bearing in mind, of course, that back in the early 70s, the X rating was assigned to films like Midnight Cowboy and A Clockwork Orange. Not at all pornographic, but dealing with adult themes, primarily sex and death, which feature prominently in Brewster McCLOUD. The film's titular character is a young dreamer and Where's Waldo prototype who lives rent-free in an abandoned fallout shelter beneath the Houston Astrodome, where he's constructing a set of mechanical wings. He spends much of his time outside of the dome, stealing books, cameras, anything to help him further the research and development of his personal flying machine. Looking out for Brewster is a mysterious blonde named Louise, played by Sally Kellerman. She's either a guardian angel or a fallen angel or witch or fairy godmother or some combination thereof. Although the exact details are unclear, Brewster and Louise are in some way responsible for the deaths of some of Houston's most repellent citizens. A corrupt, abusive police officer,
narcotics,
a greedy, bigoted landlord, and a racist old lady played by Margaret Hamilton, the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz. Their corpses all share the distinction of being covered in bird shit. The Houston Police Department is searching for the killer with the help of super cop Frank Shaft, a parody of Steve McQueen's role in Bullitt. Brewster McCLOUD's car chase scenes were in fact coordinated by the same team behind Bullitt. In its own comic way, Brewster McCLOUD is an early entry in the 1970s car chase sweepstakes, predating everything from The French Connection to The Dukes of Hazzard.
Man, incontestably the most advanced creature, has only to observe the flight of birds to realize the weight of the Earth's imprisonment.
Providing commentary on the film's action is the lecturer, who functions less as a storyteller and more like a Nat Geo narrator, commenting on the behavior of the characters as if they were particular bird species.
When an intruder disturbs or endangers the nest or young, some birds slip away quietly.
It's an approach that will be expanded to great effect 10 years later in Elaine René's film, My American Uncle, starring actual scientist and philosopher Henri Laborit.
Et il est rare qu'il puisse, pour assouvir ses besoins,
tu ne sortiras pas d'ici.
Aboutir à la lutte lorsque la fuite n'est pas efficace.
Whenever Brewster is in danger of being caught, Louise comes to the rescue. She also protects him from another imminent threat: sex.
Their sex is the closest thing they have to...
Flying.
Yes, flying.
Don't they want to fly?
Only at first. Something happens to them as they grow. And they turn more and more toward Earth. When they experience sex, they simply settle for it and procreate more of their own kind. That's why you must never be tempted. Let anything take your full concentration away from your work.
Louise's warnings seem to reflect many esoteric traditions that view sex as an act that keeps one tethered to the earth, to the material plane. Sex can be a barrier to anyone seeking to liberate themselves from it. It's commonly believed that sexual activity diminishes our capacity to fulfill other endeavors.
As Balzac said, there goes another novel.
Coaches believe this.
What? How about you give us your autograph?
Get out of here! Women weaken legs.
So does the Army.
I wonder what they gave you in the other war not to get a hard on.
The same stuff you're wolfing down now. It has saltpeter.
While law enforcement closes in on Brewster, so does a different threat named Suzanne.
Hi.
Hi.
Played by Shelley Duvall in her movie debut.
Brewster, are you a virgin?
Am I a virgin?
Suzanne soon takes care of that. When Louise discovers that Brewster has lost his virginity, she becomes something akin to Tinkerbell dying. In J.M. Barrie's original book, Peter Pan, Tinkerbell eventually drifts off and dies when Peter Pan not only stops believing in her, but forgets all about her. The film has many parallels to Peter Pan. In J.M. Barrie's book, The Little White Bird, he explains how Peter Pan escaped from being human by flying away when he was 7 days old, and that all babies start off as birds, but eventually forget that they can fly when they become human.
Rock-a-bye, baby, on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock.
Much to Tinkerbell's distress, Peter chooses Wendy, just as Brewster gets with Suzanne. To make matters worse, Brewster tells Suzanne about everything he's been doing, despite being told that he must keep his work secret in order to succeed. So, unlike Peter Pan, who refused to grow up, Brewster falls from grace and into society, filled with unimaginative adults like Suzanne, who sees the flying machine as a money-making opportunity.
Brewster, you could be a millionaire.
And then sells Brewster out to the authorities. Having lost the innocence and faith of childhood, Brewster quickly becomes something like Wendy and the Lost Boys, who all grew up and forgot how to fly. The film's most obvious point of reference is the story of Icarus, who flew on artificial wings attached to his arms with wax, which then melted when he flew too close to the sun, sending Icarus falling to his death. After Louise leaves him, Brewster finally sets out to test his wings, just as law enforcement comes swarming into the dome. Trapped in a mammoth birdcage, his capture is as inevitable as a televised high-speed chase. There's a reprise of the song White Feather Wings, as sung by Mary Clayton, legendary backup vocalist, most famous for her performance on the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter. It's a lovely song that lends a bitter twist to the film's climactic set piece. The music in Brewster McCloud was composed by John Phillips of the Mamas and Papas and one of the film's producers. He would later compose the music for The Man Who Fell to Earth, another singular film alluding to Icarus and the dangers of aiming too high. The story of Icarus is generally viewed as a cautionary tale, warning against hubris, whether it be the arrogance of an individual or of all humankind. Icarus and Brewster's overreach can be seen as representing the human desire to conquer the natural world and all physical limitations, fueled by a relentless belief in technology and human ingenuity. As Brewster is gradually overcome with exhaustion, Altman shows how it's all an illusion by deliberately sharing close-ups of the machine, clearly focused on the cables keeping Brewster afloat. Today, our belief in limitless expansion and perpetual human dominance over the Earth seems to be winding down. The spectacle of technology hides the devastation it's inflicted upon depleted ecosystems and human well-being. The lecturer alludes to the environmental impact of the human race earlier in the film.
We may also touch on the mortal damage man is doing to birds' environment in comparison to the piddling nuisance birds cause man. It may someday be necessary to build enormous environmental enclosures to protect both man and birds.
Bear in mind, this film was made in 1970, the year when Earth Day was first observed. Of course, we don't know exactly what Altman and co-writer Brian McKay had on their minds. During the course of production, Altman often had late-night brainstorms and would rewrite scenes or create entirely new ones. There's a kind of stream of consciousness vibe to the entire film, a sensibility present in all of his work, and highly refined in later films like Three Women, which he claimed was based on a dream he had. Brewster McCloud is not a perfect film. There are moments that either come out of nowhere or seem to lead nowhere, which is to be expected whenever you fly in the face of reason and trust in intuition, which may explain why it was Altman's favorite of his own films, and why a more left-brained filmmaker like Quentin Tarantino calls it the worst film of the 1970s. I disagree with Tarantino's assessment, but then I was 3 years old when the film's central image was burned into my subconscious, so I can't really be objective.
And down will come baby, cradle and all.